Hello again and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in this week and thanks for watching. So, I want to talk this week about something that got a lot of attention last week, and it was a statement by Justin Trudeau, and it read, "Housing needs to retain its value." And this was in an interview with the Globe and Mail, which was recorded back in April, and it was titled, "A Conversation with Justin Trudeau on Canada's Housing Crisis." Now, the point of my video today is to call out Trudeau for lying. Around the same time that he recorded this interview, he released the 2024 budget. And of course, the budget focused a lot on housing, and it was fairness for everyone or something like that. And he was promising to build all these homes, affordable homes, especially for the younger generation. And of course, now he turns around and says housing needs to retain its value. So if it retains its value, how is it going to be affordable for the younger generation or for the generation of people looking to get into the market still? So, of course, Trudeau is just playing politics. He's trying to pander to both sides, and now I'm calling him out for it. Trudeau is acting like a real estate agent who hasn't sold a house in 6 to 12 months. He's very desperate and he needs the sale, or your vote in this case. So I'm going to go through some of the interview. I'm not going to harass you with playing clips from it, so you have to listen to his voice, but I do have some key points, and it's quite disturbing, his answers and the tone. The tone to the person or the journalist is very condescending. She's obviously a younger person. Maybe she's trying to get into the market too. He treats her like a school kid with that kind of attitude, and it's a very condescending interview. But I will post the link down below. So if you want to torture yourself and listen to the whole 32 minutes, go ahead. But I've captioned some of the important parts that I feel represent this interview best. Now, this interview was pre-planned and scripted. The questions were most likely given to him before, which is not abnormal. I do the same when I'm interviewing somebody. And you could tell overall he wasn't comfortable doing this interview because it's an important topic that he needs to answer for. And lastly, I highly doubt Trudeau would ever do a interview with a YouTuber, a podcaster, or some independent media. This media outlet has received the government's bailouts money in 2019 and 2020. So they are very scripted and they do cater to Trudeau. They're not out to make any enemies because they will most likely get cut off from the funding. So the first question from Irene Galea. I asked the Prime Minister how prices got so out of control on his watch and when Canadians can expect to see the benefits of his new housing policy. And like a school teacher talking to a child, this was Trudeau's response. I've cut out all the mumble jumble in between and just got to the important parts of the answer. Oh, I think things are changing all around the world right now, but here in Canada, it is particularly acute. So, of course, blaming everybody else, it's not his fault, it's a global problem. The math has just fundamentally changed. The system is different than it was before, and it's a combination of things. Some of it may be pandemic, some of it may be the desirability of Canada as a strong, stable, growing democracy that can welcome people from around the world. So the pandemic and that Canada is just such a great country is why real estate is so expensive, according to Trudeau. The journalist follows up with this. But again, it does feel like it's gotten quite a bit worse under your administration. And I wonder, has your government failed in its housing policies? After he goes through his pre-scripted answer, he says, we did invest in housing. We did create more affordable housing. But it's like there's been a step change, particularly since the pandemic, particularly with the impact on interest rates, particularly with global speculation that is accelerating, despite all the real work the federal government did. So, of course, blaming everybody else, the pandemic, interest rates, nothing the federal government did is to blame for the housing crisis in Canada, is what he's saying. But the one big lie is at the beginning of that statement, or the statement that I've paraphrased here. We did invest in housing. We did create more affordable housing. So I'm not even going to answer this question. I'll let you think about that. Do you think since 2015 we have more affordable housing in Canada somewhere? I don't know where it is, but if you can find it, let me know. I would say that's an utter lie, but let me know in the comments what you think. Just this week, your housing minister, Sean Fraser, said the federal government is going to bypass the Ontario government and hand $350 million in housing funding directly to municipalities. Why does the federal mandate take precedent over what the provinces want? This is where I find things kind of get disturbing, and I'll read this and I'll tell you why after. First of all, the Housing Accelerator Fund that asked provinces or asked municipalities directly to increase their densification and zoning rules to allow for fourplexes and for units as of right was simply us saying, look, we're going to put $4 billion on the table to be spent on municipalities across the country who are willing to take on their responsibilities and tackle with ambition the housing crisis. There are some cities, including Windsor, Ontario, that said, no, we're not a city that wants to do 4 units as of right. And we said, no problem. We just won't sign a deal with you. This money will go to other cities that are ambitious and want to do that. We're not forcing it on anyone. Now, I will say he is a master at manipulating the wording. Now, look at the wording of the last part there. We're not forcing it on anyone. Is he talking about the housing fund or is he talking about something else? This seems awfully familiar, this not forcing it on anyone. It's up to you. But the disturbing part is they're promising these funds and they're saying, look, we want to build more houses, but if you don't do it the way we want, you're not getting any money. So they're not allowing cities and municipalities to do what's best within their cities. They're saying, no, we have a federal agenda that wants density, no parking, fourplexes as of right, and all the rest of this. And the municipalities in places like Windsor that are very suburban and, thrive off of detached homes and not fourplexes and sixplexes, they're saying, well, this doesn't fit our business model in our city or our city model. And he's saying, well, too bad you're not getting money because we want it done our way, not your way. But at the same time, he's saying, well, we're offering this money and you're not taking it. So it's a federal agenda they're pushing on cities and municipalities that aren't a good fit. And they're turning around and saying, well, you're on your own then. Which leads us into the next question. Do you personally support urban sprawl if it means building more houses more quickly? And of course, if you've read the Housing Accelerator Fund goals, they do not want anything that's not density. So this is his answer. I think that's a bit of a false dichotomy because building more houses more quickly, the best way to do that is to build density. But that's more difficult. It's more expensive. Not necessarily. Building larger apartment buildings or condo building beside a big park where you can have a much greater density, where you can set up public transit, that was a big difference that we brought in 2015. Much more massive investments in public transit than the previous government. Again, fitting his agenda, he wants public transit, high density buildings, nobody driving cars. This is what the federal government wants, not necessarily what's the best fit for every municipality in Canada. You campaigned in 2015 on a speed train. That never happened. Where did that go? We're still working on it. And then a bunch of propaganda after that. So the next question is the lead up to the famous quote that everyone has been quoting, where housing needs to retain its value. And there's more to this question. There's more to the answer that has been reported. And it is important what he said, but the rest of it's important too, because I'm going to dissect it to see what he's really saying and what his intentions really are. Population growth isn't the only thing adding fuel to the fire when it comes to housing prices. Real estate investment is also driving prices higher as purchasing property has become a primary tool for many Canadians to accumulate wealth and save for retirement. So existing homeowners want prices to stay high or even go up. Those trying to get into the market want it to come down. So do those who've broken into the housing market in Canada need to accept some sacrifices when it comes to the value of their home? Now, this is a great question because this is forcing him to choose, and this makes him uncomfortable. Are you with the existing homeowners to retain their value for the retirement years? Or are you with the young generation who can't afford to buy homes that you promised you were going to build affordable homes for in your 2024 budget? So let's see how he answers. No, I think housing prices and houses will always be valuable in this country. So kind of a non-specific non-answer. I think anyone who hopes for housing prices to remain on the kind of trajectory they've been on over the past decade or two should maybe think about what kind of society and world they want to live in, where only people who either inherited wealth or had very, very good timing and started launching a startup or whatever are able to actually get into a more expensive market. So then he flips to the other side and says, what kind of a world are we going to live in? And I've actually said this too. If prices continue to go up, we're going to have civil unrest and social unrest. So he touched on both sides without giving an answer. He's saying, well, no, but yes. So anyway, let's keep reading. This is where the now famous comment comes up. But housing needs to retain its value. It's a huge part of people's potential for retirement and future nest egg. So now he flips back to existing homeowners, assuring them that your value needs to be retained and it's going to be okay. It's your nest egg. Don't worry. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure your house retains its value. And actually, they are doing everything they can, but it won't work. But they're trying. I mean, the difference between someone who's rented all their lives versus someone who is a homeowner in terms of the money they have for retirement is massive. And that's not necessarily always fair. And now he flips back, kind of. It's a non-answer saying, well, it's not fair. People who have rented, they're not going to have as much for retirement. Is he saying like that's life? It's not fair, or it's not right that it's not fair? But let me remind you of Budget 2024, headlined Fairness for Every Generation. The 2024 federal budget is the government's plan to build more homes faster, help make life cost less, and grow the economy in a way that helps every generation get ahead. So it seems that last paraphrase I took was pandering to the people that are not in the market, saying it's not fair. Doesn't really say we're going to do anything about it, but he's saying it's not fair right after he said we need to retain value for the retirees. So again, he's lying to somebody, and I just want to know who it is. And lastly, he says this. So yes, we need to keep the housing stable and valuable, but we need to make sure more people can get into it to build that kind of stability within our communities. So again, he's lying to somebody. You can't keep house prices stable right now and have affordable homes for young people. If we get to September and the polls show then that you're as far down as you are now, will you run again? And even though the majority of Canadians would vote him out right now, his answer, I'm running again. Now, this last question, I believe, was unexpected. He really struggled with the answer on this. And if you do listen to the actual audio recording of this podcast, listen from 30 minutes on because he really fumbles a lot and there's a lot of back and forth here. One final question. When can a young middle-class Canadian expect to be able to afford a home in this country? And this is a great question, knowing that he just made this promise to all the young Canadians with his Budget 2024, fairness for every generation, affordable homes built fast. And this is his answer. Again, it's fragmented because she had to keep interrupting him because he wasn't answering and he was making excuses. My expectation is in the coming years, young people will be able to see the path towards owning a home. When can they own a home? In the coming year, sorry, what's their income? Now he's making the answer difficult. An average Canadian income, what do you consider middle class? Middle class are people who work for their money, the people who actually don't have their assets working for them. Middle class encompasses lots of Canadians who don't feel like they're middle class anymore. Probably the truest statement from him in this interview. Canadians should be able to work hard and own their own home. And right now, there are too many barriers in this economy to doing that. And this government is fixing those barriers in a very meaningful way. And that's what Canadians are going to get to decide in the coming years. Yes, in the coming years, young people should be able to see the path towards home ownership. So we went from Budget 2024, building more homes faster, fairness for every generation, to in the coming years, young people should be able to see the path. Not even the home ownership, just the path to home ownership. So not very promising. It seems like he's very quickly flipped from the Budget 2024 announcement on all these promises with affordable homes to protecting people's wealth, and home ownership for the younger generation is now a secondary agenda in his mind. One last thing that you have to watch when you're reading any of the government propaganda lately on housing is reading between the lines of home ownership and affordable homes. Affordable homes doesn't mean home ownership. Affordable homes could mean a room or an apartment in a fourplex in a city somewhere that you don't own. So be very careful when they're mixing and mingling these words together. Let me know, as always, what you think in the comments. And until next week, I'll see you then.